Please welcome Nemo.
Thank you. So these guys are going to come at you with hard data, and I'm going to get you thinking about what the future might mean specifically to you. I'm going to make this very personal about me so you can think about what that means for you. As she said, I work for Local Motors, and I work in something called co-creation. As such, that means that I'm engaging a global community on a one-to-one level, a lot of times, all the time, and we tend to think about new mobility and what does that mean, and it tends to be very personal when I engage these people, again, globally, and we have a lot of trouble trying to frame context around what does that mean. Now, I'm a father of 6, so we have teenagers in the family. I have 4 cars at home. So when I think of new mobility, I think of, I don't have to own 4 cars. That's awesome. And so I think this. I want to build a race car. Now, what does that have to do with mobility? I'm going to tell you. This is kind of similar to the image that we just saw. Actually, I saw my car in your image. Don't think I didn't notice. New mobility should be around designing around people. How do we move people around? I love the data that you presented because it's showing that people are starting to think on that level. Rather than what do we do with car ownership, it's what do we do to move ourselves to and fro efficiently. So the streets should look more like this. This is a speculation that me and a technological partner did based on the idea that the street is less about cars, less about mobility, and more about people. So you see shared lanes between the tramways and the large mobility. You see micro-mobility. You see logistics that are completely autonomous. You still see driven vehicles in mixed traffic with autonomous vehicles. The point is new mobility is about how to make things much simpler for the users. So I'm not going to read this. Probably looking across the audience, most of you guys are probably smarter than me, so you could probably read this. I'm just going to touch on a few things here. In the new mobility landscape, there's going to be increase in mobility options. We've already kind of discussed that. I won't go too far into that. Increase in infrastructure changes. It was framed beautifully in the presentation before me. Thanks for that. You saved me some time. Less demand for mobility. So one thing we didn't touch on very much yet is the idea that as urbanization increases, which is speculated to increase by 2030, which is the subject of the panel later, you'll have things like distributed workforce, where people are able to work from home, smaller offices in more regional locations, so it's shorter commute. Denser urban core, so goods, services, recreation, everything's closer to home. Less need for travel, as well as a rise in the freelancing gig economy. That's growing like crazy, and I don't see it slowing down in the near future based on trends. What that means is there's less need for long-range mobility and more of a need for the micro-mobility, the short-range mobility as the denser urban cores. And I definitely want to read the quote here at the top. Is something that our CEO has said a few times. It's framed, and it's been echoed in the industry in a lot of places. At large, the auto industry, not the technology industry, but the auto industry, as well as the regulations, are not poised for the rapid onslaught of new mobility landscape projected to take 10 plus years to fully adjust. That means that the things that are slowing us down is not the things that we're talking about here at CES. Those things are already in the market and ready to go, but to get them out into the market, we have a lot of work to do. So does that mean we're going to see a decline in ownership? Maybe. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about data, but this is one data point that I found very interesting. Based on a Stanford economist study I read, private car ownership dropping 80% by 2030. Well, that's good for me because that's not in the business I'm in, so that's great. Number of passenger vehicles going down drastically from 247 million to 44 million in American roads. Also, electric rideshare from 4 to 10 times cheaper than buying a new car. So what that means, and that's only half the story, what we're talking about is mobility becoming a utility. Internet, you talk about a decade ago. We're talking about a decade future. Let's talk about a decade ago. Internet, high-speed internet was a bit of a luxury for most homes in North America. Now it's standard. In some places, if you move into an apartment complex or your HOA or something like that, you have it already in your home. Mobility will become that type of utility, hopefully by 2030, making it to where cost of ownership of a car is replaced with a subscription service or something of that nature, making it substantially cheaper. So this is only going to work if the annual cost of mobility as a utility is dramatically less than cost of ownership of a vehicle. Now, owning a vehicle for primary commute purposes could be replaced with holistic, seamless, and fully customizable experience across all mobility platforms. I'll touch on that a little bit more. And that should still cost less than owning a mobility appliance, which is what we like to call it internally at Local Motors, for basic everyday commutes. We are based in the Phoenix area. It's a large urban sprawl, and your average commute from where you work to where you live is upwards to 45 minutes on a good day. And we don't even have near the traffic congestion issues of a town like San Francisco that was mentioned earlier. So if you think about that, not only are you saving money, but you have the ability to save time as well. And so you think, what am I going to do with that extra time? And what am I going to do with that extra money? Now, I want to do some industry parallels here. The idea of replacing something like ownership with replacing a service that you pay a subscription for or you pay a monthly fee for, it's already been happening. We're experiencing, and we're in the middle of the rise of that right now. I know you look across all those companies and you think, well, some of those are free. But it's a service that you used to have in your home. You used to have an ownership. One specifically is Wikipedia. Granted, Wikipedia is suspect. I've maybe put in some fake entries in there myself, but I'm not admitting that publicly. What I'm saying is Wikipedia is replacing the idea that you used to buy encyclopedias for your home. You used to always have a dictionary book, hard copy, on a shelf to be able to get resources, and then you had to update those every 4 or 5 years just to stay current. That information is updated daily, sometimes hourly, and it's at your fingertips all the time. I even put another one in there that's kind of fun, Fortnite. What people don't realize is Fortnite as a gaming mega trend has changed the fundamental way that game developers are thinking about developing and selling games. You're no longer selling a game disc or 2 discs. The idea of selling a subscription service or a freemium type of application is super commonplace. What does that mean for mobility? It means that ownership being replaced by a subscription service is not that big of a jump. So this is I was thinking we were taking questions, but we'll take questions apparently later. But my question to you, just kind of reminisce on this, is what do you do with your extra money? And not only that, what would you do with your extra time? If you get the time back from your commute, or you're able to be productive en route of your commute due to the rise of things like autonomy and things like that, what would you do with that? Thank you.